Well, hey guys, it's Saturday and we're finishing up our faith and leadership series, and we all may not be running for President of the United States one day. Although, if you've seen the current field, maybe it's something you could think about in a few years. We may not all be president, but whether you realize it or not, you're a leader. Somebody's looking up to you. You may have younger siblings that look up to you, people in your school that are younger that look up to you. You may have older people that look up to you because of the example that you are. Some of you may think, I'm really not that great of a leader. Nobody looks up to me. I'm the one that's trying to be like everybody else. But I think what we're going to look at here, the final kind of component or the final part of being a leader, this is something that takes zero talent. When we think of leaders, we think of people who have like dashing good looks, like tall, dark, and handsome people. We think of people who have like the chiseled abs. We think of people who know how to like talk to other people and are good with their words. When we think of leaders, we think of people who are good at school, and maybe you're like me, not that good at school. So we think of leaders, sometimes we think of people who are gifted and talented and are just stinking awesome at everything they do. But being a leader really isn't as much about talent, especially when we're talking about faith. Being a leader for Jesus, being a champion for Christ, is not so much about talent as it is, as Jordan told you yesterday, as it is about discipline. And the final piece of this leadership puzzle is a discipline. It's a habit that we bring into our life that is so important if you're going to be a good leader. Because you already are a leader, whether you realize it or whether you admit it or not, you're a leader. So we find Moses, who, many of us, if you know the story of Moses, he was a great leader, but a reluctant leader. He had to lead millions of people, millions of Israelites out of Egypt from slavery, across the desert, across the wilderness, and into this land that God had promised. And these people made it hard on him. They were always complaining. They were always doing the wrong thing. Moses is up on the top of a mountain getting the 10 commandments from God, speaking to God. He comes down with God's law, and he finds his people drunk, partying, sacrificing to these like false pagan gods. So imagine Moses. He's trying to be a spiritual leader. He's trying to be like a national leader among these people, and they're just making it so hard on him. I'm sure he was thinking, man, I'm not much of a leader. But Moses tapped into this power that you and I have the same access to. Actually, I believe we have more direct access to now than Moses even did. And we learned that Moses was a leader who prayed. And in Exodus chapter 33, we see a little glimpse into Moses' prayer life. It says in chapter 33, verse 7, Moses used to take the tent and pitch it outside the camp. Far off from the camp, he called it the tent of meeting. And everyone who sought the Lord would go out to that tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. Whenever Moses went out to the camp, all the people would rise up. Each would stand at his tent door and watch Moses until he had gone into the tent. When Moses entered the tent, a pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent, and the Lord would speak with Moses. So Israel, they're kind of like on this like multi-year backpacking journey across like the Middle Eastern desert. Not a fun time to lead people through, right? So they would stop and they would set up camp. And they would stay there for a few days sometimes. And they'd set up their tents. All of them would set up this huge, massive village of tents. And there was this one tent that Moses would set up, and it was called the tent of meeting. And that's where people could go in and they could pray to God and they could talk to God. And everybody knew that Moses had this great relationship with God, because when Moses would walk to the tent of meeting, it says everyone would stand at their own tent doors, their little tent houses, their tent door, and watch him as he walked in, because they knew something incredible was going to happen between God and Moses there. And it says in verse 10, all the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the entrance, and they would rise up and worship each at his tent door. Moses' prayer life, Moses being a leader, not just in getting them across the desert, but leading them to God, caused them to worship God. Just like when we pray to God, when we meet with God, we cause others to follow our example and meet with God and worship God. Thus, verse 11, the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face as a man speaks to a friend. And that was a very unique privilege back then. If Jesus hadn't come, died on the cross, ascended to heaven to intercede for us and make a way that we can approach the throne of God like we can today. We have that same access that Moses had to talk to God like we're talking to a friend. When Moses turned into the camp again, it says in verse 11, his assistant, Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, would not depart from the tent. And here's where we see this really cool picture of Moses and his leadership. Moses is a little bit older. Joshua was his kind of assistant, and he was a little bit younger. And we see that it seems like Joshua goes into the tent with Moses, and Moses has this wonderful time with the Lord, this wonderful time of praying. We learn later that Moses is asking God to take care of his people. He's confessing the sins of the nation and asking for forgiveness. And Joshua, even after Moses leaves, it says he would not depart from the tent. Moses left an example that Joshua followed, an example that the most important thing was the time that you spend with God in prayer. So the question is, are we leaving that same example for other people? As leaders, if people were to follow in our footsteps, would they be spending more time with God or less time with God? And thanks for joining us today. I hope you have a great rest of the day on Saturday, and join us for worship here at Lewis tomorrow. You'll see Musgrave and I, you'll see Jordan and I. We'll be at the tent partying hard, so make sure to stop by, say hi, and we'll smile at you through our masks.